Mm.
Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live coaching call with Nito Marketing. Today we have Stephen Hudson here to talk about some amazing stuff. Stephen, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
For sure. So Stephen is a story brand trainer, and we're going to be helping you craft your story. And what is a really good tool is Story Brand, which really walks you through how to do that. Because we know as Montessorians, we tend to talk a lot, and that makes it really hard for us to clearly communicate what our stories really are and how to, use that in our marketing and with our prospective parents. So Stephen has a lovely presentation that he's going to give us to just give some of the tools that we can use. And then of course, the next 2 weeks, we're going to do some follow-ups. So we'll actually teach you how to write your story next week. And then that follow-up, the following week, we'll do hot seats. So like you bring your stuff and we'll workshop it out with you. So awesome. So Stephen, again, thank you for being here. And what I would love to know a little bit more about is why is this important, right? Like, why is this process important? We've got, Montessori basics down. We have the principles. We highlight those. We have great conversations with prospective parents, but why is going through this process important?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And for me, it's the foundation of everything that you do in your marketing. There are so many different things that you can do in marketing, especially digital marketing, right? Which is this whole new thing that's been happening in the last 10 years, 15 years. But all of those tactics, all of those tools, if your message and your words aren't clear, people tune out. People are exposed to about 3,000 commercial messages a day if you're living in like a suburban area or even outside, because we've got our phones, we're on our computers all the time. We're getting bombarded with so much noise. And in that type of environment, the only people that win are the people that communicate the clearest. It's not about being like cute, clever, or talking all about yourself. It's about how can you help the customer, how can you help the person who's on your website, who's interested, who needs what you have, even if maybe they don't know it yet, and how can you communicate that in the clearest, most simple and compelling way. It's so critical because it's the only way that people pay attention. And in my experience, Story Brand and this framework is the best way to do that. They use such clearly the elements of story specifically for marketing, and it makes all the difference in the world. And I'll show you some examples, but I have so many stories of people who just completely redid their marketing or their website, or just made little tweaks, and it just made all the difference. They started getting signups, they started getting calls, they started getting sales, all that stuff. So I think I'm super passionate about it. I love this process, and I think it's the foundation to then go out and do kind of everything else.
Absolutely. And I just went through the course, and I've been in Montessori for over 10 years, and I felt like I was pretty confident in my way of communicating, what it is that we do. But what I found as I went through this process is a lot of what I thought was important wasn't clearly articulating what it is that parents truly need to hear. It wasn't grabbing their attention. It was almost like, and you'll probably get into this, but it was almost like I was giving them too much information, and then they have to digest it to find the really important pieces that, are a part of helping them really look into your school.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge, because Montessorians are so passionate about what they do, just like, any other business that you start or any other, product that you truly believe somebody needs and wants, and it would help improve their lives. It's tricky to pick what is super important to messaging. So I am excited for what you're going to share with us today. And for those of you that are here live, make sure if you've got any questions along the way, chat those in. I know Stephen's got a presentation prepared, but he also loves to have conversations throughout. So please don't hesitate if you've got questions that come up, chat them in. I'll make sure to, pause Stephen as he goes into it, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what I'm going to cover is directly related to what you were just talking about, like what you said, like giving too much information, people digesting it, not knowing the right way to communicate stuff. Like that's exactly what this is going to help alleviate. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen because I have some slides. Everybody loves a good slide deck. So we're gonna do that here real quick. So all of you, can you just let me know, or I guess Deneen, you just let me know when you can see my screen, and I'm gonna hit play. So you should see a big StoryBrand logo right now.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Perfect. So what we're really talking about here is a huge problem, and this is for all businesses, but Montessori schools as well, is that most companies waste an enormous amount of money on marketing. And the reason is because when we do, especially for digital marketing, for websites, we get people to design our websites, or we build it ourselves. And maybe we've got somebody who's good with Photoshop, they can make something pretty, or we think that we're being clear when we're setting up our website. But the reality is we haven't studied what it takes to get people to sell. We haven't studied what makes people compelled to buy or compelled to take action, and the words that we need to use. We haven't studied how to clarify our messaging. And so what we end up with are websites like this. And this is a beautiful website. It's wonderfully designed. The image is really pretty. And but if you look at it, it doesn't really say anything. It says your journey starts here. Well, what journey? I don't know who you are. Learn more about what? You haven't told me. Get started. Do what? What am I getting started with? And then I guess maybe I'm a photographer, or you're gonna help me learn how to take pictures. You don't know. And so many of us would look at this and go, oh, this is really pretty. But when you break it down, it doesn't actually say anything. And so what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be going through how to use words that compel people to action. We're looking at really what's called the copy. And because people only buy products after they read words that make them want to buy those products. And in your case, your program, your school is, in this context, a product. People are making a buying decision. They're making a commitment. And this extends beyond products. That's what we're talking about. But it really extends to any action you want somebody to take. People will only take action after they read words that make them want to buy or make them want to take that action. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking a little bit about just how that kind of happens in the brain, what's actually going on when people are landing on your website and reading those words and seeing what you have to offer. What are they thinking? And then we're also going to talk about the framework, the StoryBrand framework, which is a framework you can use to clearly articulate your message. And it's something that I've used over and over again. It's an amazing tool, and so we're gonna walk through that. And so before we get into the actual framework, let's talk about the human brain. Again, my name is Steven, and I'm a certified StoryBrand guide, and so I've been trained by StoryBrand on this process, and I then turn around and do it for people. So I currently work at a software company that helps people create online courses and do those things like that. So I work with all those kinds of people all day long to help them clarify their messaging. That's kind of just a little bit of context for what I'm doing here. But so there's two things that the brain is trying to do all the time. The first one is survive and thrive. And when I say survive and thrive, I mean, it really means that the brain, these are the two primary functions of the brain. And so people are constantly going out and looking and seeing things and processing information. They're reading all of these marketing messages. They're browsing on their phone. And their brain is trying to determine if the information that they're seeing and absorbing is valuable or not. They're trying to see if they actually need what they're looking at. Is it valuable? Do I need it or not? Is this crucial to me to survive? Is this relationship important? Is this product important? Is it going to help me? And if it's not, then it tunes it out. It discards it. It goes, okay, we don't need that. Otherwise, if you think about it, you would just be you'd be obsessed with all these little details all around you all the time if your brain wasn't constantly filtering this out. And that goes into the second thing, which is conserving calories. So your brain's trying to conserve calories. It's trying to keep all of your systems functioning, right? And so it knows it needs calories to do that. And it knows, okay, here's how many we have. It's trying to manage all of that. And so if it deems something is unimportant to you in that moment, or if it doesn't understand it, then it just tunes it out. Because otherwise you would just be obsessed with, you'd pick up a pen and go, wow, look at the shape of this pen and look at the detail. The metal is so shiny. You would just get lost in the random, most minute details. And so this is really important, and it's happening in the background all the time. And so what's happening then for your website and for your messaging is, if that is too confusing, if people are landing on your website and they don't understand what it is that you're saying, if they're having to work to burn calories to understand, the more they have to burn, the more likely it is they're going to tune out. The harder they have to work, they're going to tune out. So the only way to cut through that is to be really clear and really compelling. And you can imagine when somebody lands on your website, it's like their brain just got on a treadmill, and it's fast, like it's running fast. It's got a little incline, and they're going to town. They're working, trying to figure out what you're trying to say. And you don't have much time, especially in today's kind of landscape that we're in. The average human attention span is about 8 seconds now online on digital media. And to compare that, a goldfish's attention span is about 9 seconds. So we have now come down. We're worse than a goldfish, and they've been the golden standard of terrible attention spans for a long time. So this is really, really important. It might not be, if you're wondering why you're not getting people signing up or people buying or people filling out or scheduling tours, it might not be that there's something broken about your school or anything like that. It might just be a messaging thing. So what I want you to do is imagine everything on your website, every single piece of information is a bowling ball. So you say, we do this. We've been in business this long. Okay, that's a bowling ball. You've just given them a piece of information. All right, so here's the guy who's checking out your website. So we give that to him, and that's great. You can handle an 8-pound bowling ball pretty good. You give them a second piece of information, and it's just another bowling ball. As soon as you give them a third, they're feeling pretty heavy. What's going to happen when you give him a fourth piece of information? He's going to drop all of them. And that's the thing. He's not just going to drop one. He's going to drop all of them. As soon as your website visitor gets to a point where it's like, all right, I don't know what's happening, it's too much, they're gone. It's not, they don't just toss out that one thing. They're going to leave. They're just going to tune out. And so what this is telling us here is that if you confuse, you'll lose. I want you to memorize this statement. This is kind of StoryBrand's motto. If you confuse, you'll lose. And this is true in marketing. It's true in any type of communication that you want to have with your customers. And this is true for Montessori schools especially. If you start using a bunch of kind of inside language, it's called insider language, it's like you cover those bowling balls with Vaseline. So it's information, it's words like, using terms and things that maybe somebody who had been at your school for a while knew, or that somebody familiar with Montessori knew. But to somebody totally brand new, their brain is having to work to interpret and try to figure out what you're saying. So that's even worse. So we don't want to do that. And so what's the solution? The solution is to use story. Story is an incredible sense-making device. The human brain is shown to daydream about 30% of the time. So 30% of your brain, like daily activity, you're daydreaming, except when it's engaged in a story. If your brain is engaged in a good story, a good movie, a good book, somebody talking and telling a good story, you're locked in. It's the only thing that's proven to really do that. And so what we want to do is we want to use story to act as a filter for your message. All right, and that's what the framework is. It acts as kind of this lens to view everything that you are and everything about your school, and put it in a way that's going to make sense and compel people to action. Okay, and another way of talking about this is it brings it's the curse of knowledge. This is a concept that was introduced by a book. I can't remember the author, but it's on a scale of 1 to 10. You know your product, your school, at a 10, right? You know everything about it. You know everything about Montessori education. Maybe not everything, but pretty close. And you're there, but you know you need to simplify it a little bit. So you go down to like 6 or 7. But the reality is people are buying and making buying decisions, which scheduling a tour is a buying decision, or signing up, that's a decision. They're making those decisions on like 1 or 2 level of understanding. So that comes back to these bowling balls, right? You think that you're being simple enough, but you've got to go way, way simpler than what you think. So each piece of information is a bowling ball. Okay, so we're gonna check out the framework now. I'll do a quick check-in. Are there any questions? I can't see the chat, so Deneen, you'll have to help me out here. Any questions that I wanna address now?
Right, so no one's chatted anything in, but I did wanna mention, when we think about our competitors, and I apologize even if you're going to talk about this as you dive into it, and by the way, you explained it beautifully, just how our message comes across. It's one thing when we're thinking about buying in the market, people are not necessarily buying the best product, they're buying the product that is so clearly communicated. And so for us in Montessori and being a competitive player in the field of childcare, early childcare, elementary or beyond, we know that our product is better. And I could say that because I'm Montessorian and I have kids in Montessori, and it's just, we just hands down, we have this amazing scientific method of education that is just beautiful. And we struggle to communicate that, and absolutely are we losing families because the competitor down the street has clear messages, parents can understand it, they get constant communication back home, feedback from what their children are doing throughout the day, and so that right there is comforting. And it doesn't necessarily mean that their product is better, it's just they communicated it better.
Yep. Absolutely. The better product does not win. The one who communicates it the clearest is the one that wins. That's true on every single level. It's true in presidential candidates, or it's true with, when you think about elections, that's a fascinating thing that we won't get into, but you look at qualifications versus the clarity of the message that a presidential candidate used, and some other concepts that we'll talk about here. And the one who communicates the clearest, they always win. So yeah, that's a huge thing to remember. And so this is the competitive advantage in a crowded marketplace, is clarity. So, all right, so we're going to talk through the story brand framework here. You can think of it as a messaging filter as well. And this is also the formula that most movies use. So I apologize if I am ruining some of your favorite movies or the joy of movie going from here on out. But you'll see there is a formula that storytellers have been using for thousands of years, and it just is wired into our brains. We love it and we're compelled by it. And so we're going to talk about how to use that in your business, in your school. So the very first thing that you need is a character. You need somebody who is an individual who wants something. So you've got your parent, and they want a great education for their child. They want their child to not become a zombie in some kind of standard job or something like that, right? They want to have life, whatever it might be for you, and this is up to you to figure out. You've got a character who wants something, but they can't really want many things. There needs to be one core thing. If you think about a movie like the Bourne movies, right? So Jason Bourne, he wants to know one thing in this story. He wants to know who he is, right? But if they tried to say, hey, he wants to know who he is, but he also wants to lose 30 pounds. And he also wants to adopt a cat. And he's also got this girl that he kind of likes, and he's trying to, maybe make something happen there. And he's thinking about buying a house. Like, you're lost already. Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So you've got one character, and you need to focus on one thing that they really want. And that's something that I think is the biggest thing that most companies do, is they don't clearly define who their customer even is and what they want, that core thing that they want as it relates to their school or product, really clearly. They don't define that want really clearly. Okay, so this is the most important step. You've got a character who wants something. And when you agitate that desire, when you articulate it, when you spell it out and you say, we know that you want this, that it compels them to enter into the story that you're telling. they're engaged. They go, yeah, that is me. And they're drawn in. Okay. So that's the first step here. Second step is they've got a problem. This is the most important, maybe not the most important, but it's one of the most powerful for me. There has to be a defining problem. People only buy if they have a problem, right? They've got a problem that they're trying to solve. Other people, if they might look at something and they go, oh, that's nice. And if they've got just a ton of money, then maybe they'll just buy stuff that they don't really need. But for the vast majority of people, they're trying to solve a problem, and that's the thing that motivates their buying. But in reality, there's 3 levels of problem. So you have the external problem, which is I need a school for my child, right? Or my toilet's leaking, right? Or it's backed up or something. Like, that's an external problem. That's the surface level. And that's where most companies stop. That's where most schools stop, I would say. There's a layer underneath that, which is the internal problem. The internal problem is, how are they feeling about this? Why does it matter? And that's the thing that you actually are solving for them. You're solving that internal problem. So you've got a parent who they need a school for their child. They want to give their child a good education. They don't know what school to choose, but they want to be a good parent, right? So the feeling that they have is like, me as a parent is on the line with choosing the right school for my childhood. They're feeling nervous. They're feeling kind of scared, right? Like that's the real problem that you're solving. And if you can dive into that with your customers, with your visitors, it's a hugely powerful thing. So the problem is majorly important. And if you stop talking about your customers' problems, they stop paying attention to your brand. Again, that is the first bit here. The desire draws them in, but if you're not clearly articulating the problem, if you're not stating like, this is the problem that we solve, then people lose out. That's the hook. That's kind of the thing to say, I am here for you. I can help you. Okay. Third principle here is that they meet a guide. This is by and large the most important piece of this for me, and it's the most transformative. A hero, really everybody, when somebody wakes up, when you wake up and you think of your own life, you think of yourself as the hero in a story, right? And so you are a hero, and what heroes needs are not other heroes to come alongside them to win the day. A hero wants to win their own story. What they need is a guide who has been there and done that, and who knows the way and can help them win the day, help them in their own story win and become successful. And so that's the stance that you as a brand need to take. And too many companies, too many brands, too many schools point the finger at themselves, that we lift up ourselves. We play the hero. And you are not the hero of the story. Your customer is the hero. Your visitor is the hero of the story. And you might think immediately like, well, no, like all we do is serve. We're here to serve. We are here to help the parents and the children to be successful. But then if you go to your website, you're going to see stuff about like, well, we started the company like X many years ago, and here's all of the things that we do, and we're this and we're that and we're over here. And all that is me. You've got to turn it around to the customer. You have to enter into their story. Your brand is about their story, not your own. And you need to position, when you do talk about yourself, it's not bad to talk about yourself, but when you do, it needs to be in a way that positions yourself as the guide. Going back to the presidential candidate thing, super interesting example from Trump versus Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's slogan, I'm with her. Who's the hero there? She is. Donald Trump, make America great again. Who's the hero? America, not him. He's playing the guide. I can help make America great again, right? It's a super easy example because it's so familiar, right? And it's so short, but that's a perfect distinction. And, he won. And that was surprising to a lot of people. Regardless of whether you think he should have or not, like the reality is he did, and he communicated more clearly. He played the guide, not the hero. So super important there. All right, the fourth piece here is we give them a plan. And so at this point, somebody's landed on your website and they've seen like, all right, clearly you guys know what I want. You say that you solve the problem that I have. You're a competent guide. I believe in you. You check my boxes. Like, I think you're what I want to do. From the step from them on this side to then making a buying decision and becoming a customer might as well be a giant like chasm, a giant canyon. It feels very big, even if it's not, even if you don't think it is. And so what we need to do here is give them a very simple plan. If people don't understand the way forward in a way that's, again, very simple, very clear, they're gonna tune out. It's like if you come to a big, like, raging, river that leads to a waterfall. It's like right there. If you're trying to cross this river, and if you slip, you're gonna fall off the edge. Somebody standing on the edge of that, looking at the bank going, I want to be on that side, but I don't know how to get there. This is so scary. This is really overwhelming. What you need to do is come alongside and go, no, we're going to go from here to that rock, then to that rock, then to that one, and then we're going to be on the other side. You need to show them the way forward. Then they go, oh, okay, great, I can do it. You're going to help me, right? Okay, here we go, boom. And that's exactly what you want to do with your plan. You want to give 1, 2, 3, maximum 4 steps. So really 3 is the kind of the magic number. 2, and the brain doesn't feel like it has enough options. 4, and it might as well be infinity. There might as well be like an unlimited number of options. So 3 is really, really, really good. 4 if you have to. But that would be something like schedule a tour. It'd be book a phone call, right? So schedule a tour, apply, and your child has a great education. Boom, done. Like 1, 2, 3. And it's that simple. And you can make it prior to them kind of making the buying decision. And then the third step there is sort of what life could look like. So how are you going to help them win? You could also do it after they kind of have already started. So for example, with like an insurance, rep or something like that, you'd say, after you buy, we're going to meet, we're going to make a plan, and then I'm going to help you get your finances in order and you'll feel confident. Right? So 1, 2, 3. Even if there's a million other steps in between that, right? Like, it's probably not that simple, but we need to portray it as that simple. Okay? So this fourth principle here is your customers need an easy step-by-step plan to move forward, or they just simply won't. And so as we go through this, be thinking about your website. All of this might be resonating with you. If it is, let me know in the chat. That'd be great to get your feedback, if any of it's resonating, or if I'm just talking to air. But just be on the lookout. It might be that one of these things is like, oh my gosh, we could do that right now. We don't have a plan. Or, oh my gosh, all the language on our website is all about ourselves. We're playing the hero. We're not playing the guide. Think of how that can apply to your school, okay? To your school right now. Okay, so there's one more thing that needs to happen that our hero needs before they actually take action, and that is we need to call them to action. The guide needs to call them to action. By default, we don't want to move. We don't want to do anything. We are comfortable where we are. Thank you very much. Even if we want something over there, it's like, I've got to move. I've got to change. I have to like take action, and that inertia problem, like, people don't naturally want to do that on their own. And so we need to give them a very clear call to action. And the worst call to action that I see all the time, it's in the form of a button, right? As I talked about it earlier, is get started. Right? Get started. It's like, okay, if I'm just sitting here and I don't do anything and I look at get started, I have no idea what that means. Like, get started doing what? Get started on dinner? Get started on, writing that letter to my grandma? Like, what is it? No, it needs to say schedule a tour. What's the action that you want them to take? If you want them to buy, if that's your call to action, it should be buy. If that's the main thing, it should be whatever the first step is they need to do to move forward with you, right? They're convinced, they like your plan, they think you're a great option. Okay, what's the next step? Schedule a tour, schedule a call, get our pricing info, whatever that might be. Okay, I know there's some other thoughts around the pricing info, and that's usually great as a lead magnet. That's a whole other thing. that's what I would call here a transitional call to action. So there's the direct call to action, which I think in most schools' case would be schedule a tour. And then there's a transitional call to action, which if somebody's not quite ready, but they're still interested, you want to give them another option. And so a transitional is great, or a secondary call to action for a lead magnet, like pricing or 5 reasons why Montessori is going to make your child amazing and a superhero, something real, right? But some actually do some work on that, but something like that where they can engage and you can get their contact information, but you have to be really clear. Okay, so number 5, unless you clearly call people to action, they simply won't take action. So make sure that your calls to action are very, very clear. Okay, last little bit here, we're almost done kind of with the framework piece, is we have to tell people what, let me move my thing, what's at stake. What's at stake? What could their life look like? What's possible? Because if there are no stakes in the story, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If there's not some like the bomb timer is ticking, right? Those are the stakes. And if people don't know what's at stake, if they don't know what's possible, they're not as engaged. They're not as likely to actually take action. So what we want to do is tell them, what can their life look like? Oh, hang on. There we go. Yeah. They want us to cast a vision of what their lives could look like. What is success? What does the promised land look like? And where this should really show up is in the imagery on your website. So on the pictures, this is an excellent way, I would argue the best way to portray success. If you've got a picture of your school, that's great. Show happy children and parents at your school, not just your school in and of itself, right? And don't show like a picture of a flower. That's not particularly helpful. Like we want to show them and it's the parent, right? It's not the kids. Kids aren't browsing and making buying decisions. The parents are. So what does success look like for the parents? And you need to figure that what that is, figure out what that is for your school. But that's what you want to portray. And you want to use that in words too. So pepper that in. This is something you can use everywhere. This is marketing. This is blog posts. This is lead magnets. This is ads. This is emails. Like, if somebody signs up to get a tour, you want to be hitting them with some emails with this stuff. Say like, this is what's possible. Here's what your life and your child's life is going to look like. Paint that picture. A great little trigger here is using the words imagine if, and then some picture of success. If you have trouble kind of thinking of what that might be, do an exercise, say like imagine that, or imagine if, your child picked up the toys after themselves, was calm, in the activities that they were doing and loved going to school, right? Like those types of things, we want to cast a vision of what life could look like. Okay, and the last one here is failure. So again, we've got success, and then on the other end is failure. That this is really where the stakes come in. We want them to know what is at stake, because if there are no consequences, there's no real reason to do business with you. There's actually no point to a movie if there's nothing at stake. If you think of all the great movies, if you think of Star Wars, right? It's the fate of the universe. The rebellion will go under if Luke doesn't destroy the Death Star. And success means freedom for all the people, but the stakes are what drive that. There's something really bad that's going to happen. And you have to be careful with failure. It should be used like salt in a recipe. You don't want to use too much, but it needs to be there. Okay, so don't overdo it, but you've got to outline like what's at risk, why, and them. Everybody does, right? That's the funny thing. If I were to just talk with you or talk to a Montessori school owner and say, hey, what's at risk? Like why is Montessori so much better? Like, why shouldn't my kid just go to public school and go to a traditional education? Like, I mean, it's on such a huge scale. It's like, no, it's the future of our children and the country and the world and our communities at stake. You need to tell people that. You need to articulate that in your marketing. Otherwise, it's like, okay, this is a good idea, but there's not really that motivator. Okay, so what you want to do after going through all of that, this is a great place. If anybody has questions, let me know, just anything to clarify, but I'll keep going here. What you want to do now is actually go through that for yourself. I'll give you a resource here at the end that you can use for that, but you want to do that. You want to ask yourself at each of these points how it relates to your school. So what do our customers want? That's the character. What are our customers' external, internal, and philosophical problems? I didn't even touch on philosophical. That's kind of what I just talked about with the stakes, right? Like kids should have an education that makes sense with their development, that actually aligns with their development, not being forced into a system that is outdated, right? That type of thing with the bigger picture. Have we positioned our brand as the guide to the hero? Have we created a clear plan for the hero to win the day? There's the plan. Are our calls to action clear, direct and transitional? Have we helped our hero imagine how we can improve their lives, and have we identified the consequences that we're helping them to avoid? So this right here, if you want to take a screenshot, I'm happy to send this list out to you too. Again, I have a resource that'll help you create this for yourself, but this is it. This is the magic. If you've got this down and you spread it throughout your school, so your teachers know it, your parents know it, and everybody that's communicating to customers knows this down, it's transformative. It's really incredible. So this is the resource. If you go to mystorybrand.com, you can create a free account that will help you create a brand script. That's what this is called. We just created a movie script, if you will, for your business, for your marketing message. And so it's a free tool. You can like fill all this out. You can brainstorm. There's notes and there's little videos to kind of explain certain things. But at the end, what you've got here is these seven messages that customers will actually listen to, because it's filtered through the elements of story. It's simple, it's clear, it's focused on them, positioning you as the guide to help them win the day, and they know it's at stake. All right, so that's really the next thing. And this is an example that we have here for you. This is a business, they Equify Asset Services, realizing confidence in your assets. This is not for me. I'm not the targeted person here, but I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what they're doing. I'm kind of perfect in this case because I don't understand anything about this. This is before they kind of got story branded, as the verb is. This is after. This is their website after. And so right on their homepage, you can see they've got a button up in the top here that says, oh, hang on. Let me move. I moved ahead too fast. I'm trying to move my my Zoom thing is blocking the top. But there's a button that says call now, right? So call now, that's a very, very clear call to action versus over here, contact us, pretty good. View inventory, also pretty good. That's kind of a secondary. Call now, here's the number, boom. 5 ways we make your company stronger. I know what it is that they do now. I don't even know if I fit, but I know, like, well, I want my company to be stronger. And then you read what the paragraph they have. Equify works closely with business owners to greatly improve their cash flow standing and protect them from risk. Awesome, that sounds great. While maximizing their value and creating peace of mind. I want peace of mind, right? So that's success. There's the super clear, like what they want, a character, business owners. What do I want? I want to improve my cash flow standing, and I don't want to be at risk. And then they've got the 5 ways, the 5 clear services that they've got to do that. So just an example of a transformation, right? This is confusing. Even just looking at it, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much there. I don't even know where to start. Your brain is already tuning out. Here, much more clear, much more compelling, and much easier for the brain to digest. All right, so next steps for you. Yeah. What were you
It
gonna
was
say?
a beautiful picture. It was a
Oh,
smart
yeah.
place for the picture.
Absolutely, right? Yeah, this is a dude looking at a tractor wheel. Like, that's not inspiring at all. That is not, like, as a business owner, I'm not looking at that going, oh, that's what I want my day to look like. That, though, you've got a dad with his kids running around that all look like him with the hat and the boots. It's amazing, right? Like, that's the picture of success. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good call. Good call. Good catch there. Um, so step one, you can either read the book by Donald Miller called Building a Story Brand. It's the best book that you're going to buy this year. So I would just do that. It's like $12, maybe a little bit more now that it's been out for a bit. You can take the online course going to storybrand.com, or you could go to a live training that they've got. Either way, you don't even have to do any of those. You can go right to step two and do create a brand script. And that is at mystorybrand.com. And you go through that, and even if you don't get it right, there's a big fear of like, I have to do this right. Just do what comes, answer the best way you can. I guarantee by the end of that, you're going to have something that's so much more clear and so much more compelling than whatever you have right now. You'll have your entire message, your entire purpose and marketing message on one piece of paper. It's so, so powerful. And then the third thing is then go and actually clarify all of your marketing material. So that's your website, your ads, any emails that you've got, that kind of thing. Look through it with this lens, change what needs to happen. And the beautiful thing about this is that we're really just changing words. There's some images that we've talked about. So if you can change the imagery, do it. But in general, this isn't a whole like website redesign. It's a simplify. It's a removal of things that are confusing. So this is words are free to change. You don't really need to pay a whole lot to do that. So it's so powerful. So do that. Go through your website and see if you can make some of these changes. If you do any of them, it's going to help. I would say the biggest one is the amount of text, like the spacing. If it's really dense, that's super confusing, and make sure you have clear call to actions. Okay. So that is that's it, and now I'm open for Q&A. I'll stop this little presentation if I can. There we go. Stop sharing. And if anybody has questions, or if we want to talk through anything else, if you have any other comments, happy to go through that. Happy to answer.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Stephen. I'd be curious to know, for those of you that are live, does this resonate with you? When you really think about your messaging in general, but specifically your website, because I feel like I come across a lot of websites for Montessori schools, and they have the big block text, right? So it's like giant paragraph, another giant paragraph, and another giant paragraph, and it is all really great information, and I like reading it because I know it and it's my language. But I imagine there's a lot of prospective parents that just go, whoa, that's a lot. It's too much for me right now. Or they just like flag it and they intend to come back to it, but then, they don't have time to do it.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to know, for those of you that are live, if that's what your experience is as well. And Mary Jane said, my website has a bio of me on it. Do you think that should be taken out?
No, I don't think that should be taken out at all. That's a huge thing. People only do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And so a bio is a fantastic way to kind of jump over that and get people who are strangers sitting at their computer to know, like, and trust you. So absolutely keep the bio, but read through it and make sure that it's positioned as, like, if you're talking about what you're good at or your experience or what you're passionate about, it's all great, but just make sure that it ties back into how that helps the customer. What's the benefit for the customer? I spent 10 years as the administrator of this, so I know how to make sure your child has the best experience at school. Like, you've got to tie that. I'd say that's the biggest thing that's missing from most of that type of, like, most bios, most copy that's sort of self-focused. If you just added a little thing on the end that goes, so that it will help you do this, or so that your child will experience this, it would be so much better. Like, it would be great. And then usually it's less. So yeah, I would look and just see what can be taken out, and see if you can tie things back to the customer as much as you can.
That is a great pro tip. Like, I didn't even think about that. That's huge, right?
Yes.
Because I was thinking as you were answering this, I'm like, well, I'm answering it in my head. It would be really helpful just to have like quick bullet points that tie back into your story, but even having that extra few words at the end that helps them be the hero again, right? Like that's such a key piece of all of this. Like, yes, we're guiding your children, and yes, we want you to be here, but we're also guiding you so that you can make the best decision moving forward.
Yeah.
And we're not, saving everything for you. We're actually guiding you in the way so that you
Yeah.
can be successful.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's
And
so
people want to find, they want to know if you're a competent guide. They're looking for that. So you need to have information about yourself on there. They're trying to answer that question, but it's always in their mind. It's always in the context of, can this person help me win the day? So if they read a bunch of things that just sounds like it's all talking about, this person, it's like, okay, great. Well, it sounds like you're a hero in your own story over here. That's great. Super happy for you. I hope you do great. I need somebody who can help me to win in my story. So I'm going to go do that. And you want to make sure that that's not what you're saying. So yeah, just tying that back is super, super helpful. And that applies to, I think, one of the things that most non-marketers, honestly, and marketers struggle with the most is when you sit down to maybe write an email or to write some sort of piece of communication where you're trying to get people to take an action. So maybe it's an email announcing, enrollment season, or you have a new program coming up that you want people to take an action. Like, you sit down and you've got a blank piece of paper in front of you and you just think, how in the world do I start? Like, what do I write about? How do I do this? And using these elements has almost completely eliminated that like stress point for me of like, okay, what's the right way to do this? All I think of is, okay, well, who am I talking to? What do they want? And what's the problem I'm solving? Just those three is usually enough to get me going. And really, you should start with the problem. It's like, hey, are you summer's getting close. Are you trying to figure out what you're going to do with your kids all summer long? Guess what? Like, we have a program for this, and then it's just the framework. You just do want to go look at it, whatever you're about to say, whatever message you're about to put out, just put it through that framework real quick, make the adjustments, and you'll be amazed at the difference and the response that you'll get from that. Just doing those things, it really works.
And I also imagine when you go through that process, it's going to make it much easier to talk about it as well.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, it's so awkward to try and do this for yourself, and to then turn around and try to communicate it. Because what'll happen is somebody will say, "Oh, tell me about your school. Like, what do you do?" And you'll go, the brand script. We do this, and here's the plan, and you just get all messed up. And it's okay. Like, every single person who's been trying to do this has gone through that. But it will become a muscle. You just have to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and get more and more simple, right? And talk to people, talk to parents. I'm sure most of you are super close with parents, and so this probably isn't as big of a challenge for most businesses. But understanding where they're coming from and understanding where they're at, their mindset before they get started, and then like, okay, well, what pushed you over the edge? Like, what made you choose our school? Understanding that journey is so important. It's so important. And then use all the stuff that Nido Marketing talks about to then get that message out, all the various marketing methods and advertising and things like that. So.
Right. Absolutely. Well, this has been so incredibly valuable, Stephen. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your thoughts, and this amazing framework that works so well with Montessori. Even just the guide, like you call it a guide. Well, that makes sense for us, right? Like, we know as guides in the classroom, we're not the heroes in this. The children are, and so we already have that innate in us. And so to frame it this way in such a simple, very logical way, it makes it accessible,
It really does. So. It really does. And we know it. That's the thing I love about this. When I first was exposed to this information, I was like, oh my gosh, this is all so true. I know all of this, but there's a block sometimes with actually then turning around and putting it into practice. And this makes it very easy. So check out the book, Building a Story Brand. You go to the website, mystorybrand.com, to create your own brand script and get some other context around some of this stuff. And yeah, the last thing just to remember that I'll leave you with is if you confuse, you lose. In a crowded marketplace, the person who communicates the clearest wins, not necessarily the best product, or in this case, the best school, the ones who communicate. So if you can communicate, you have, communicate clearly, you have the competitive advantage. So don't confuse, don't confuse.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Stephen, for joining us. We so appreciate you here. And for those that are live, thank you for being here. I know that there's going to be some people that are going to watch the recording too, because this is a hot topic. This is a big one for us. So next week, don't forget, we're going to actually dive into the details and work through this and come up with ideas. And of course, as you were going through this, Stephen, I was like, oh yeah, that. We're going to just go through all that next week so we can give you some more things to think about when you go through this process.
Yeah, fantastic.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again, Stephen, and thanks for everybody joining. We'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good. Bye.